There was a pocket knife rattling around a coffee can of loose nails and screws on a workbench outside a machine shed in central Illinois. Bone handle gone yellow, blade rusted shut. The kind of thing most folks would toss without a second look. That knife, tang stamp, barely readable under 60 years of grime, and sold for a little over $1,500. Now, $1,500 out of a nail can. And pocket knives are the one thing I check twice before I ever let a junk drawer close again. Today we're counting down 10 old pocket knives sitting in drawers and toolboxes right now, worth a lot more than anybody guesses. And I'll show you exactly what separates a $2 knife from a $2,000 one. Before we get going, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Texas, Pennsylvania, Wales, doesn't matter, I read every single one. And por pusco vacha bode scolrea. And stick with me to number 6, because that's the knife that taught me to never judge a blade by a stuck spring. Let me be straight with you first. Most old pocket knives are $5 to $20 knives. Dump out a junk drawer at any farm sale, and 8 or 9 of every 10 in there are common production knives, worth about what a new one costs at the hardware store. That's the honest math. The 10th one is why I still pick through every coffee can of loose hardware I come across. Here's why the old ones beat the new ones. Before overseas manufacturing took over in the 70s and 80s, and American knife companies forged their blades from real high-carbon steel and hand-fit every spring and pin, which is why an old knife opens and closes with a solid, confident snap instead of a mushy wobble. Flip the knife open and look at the tang, that flat, unsharpened section near the pivot. That's where the maker stamped their name. And reading that stamp correctly is most of the battle. Then check the handle material. Real bone, stag antler, and genuine mother of pearl all have texture and grain variation, and you can feel and see up close. Plastic imitations, even good ones, are too perfectly uniform. 2 quick rules before we start. Count the blades and check the spring count. But since a knife with 3 or 4 blades sharing one spring is generally a more complex, often older and better made pattern than a simple 2-blade knife. And a shield, that small metal inlay on the handle where an owner's initials sometimes got engraved, is a feature worth checking closely. And because a fancy shield on an otherwise plain knife often signals a higher grade original pattern. Number 10. The common two-blade jackknife that's sold by the millions at every hardware store and five and dime in America for most of the last century. Most of these are exactly what they look like, a $10 knife. But before companies switched entirely to stamped, mass-produced tangs, the better examples carried a deep and check the tang stamp depth and clarity, check the handle material for real bone versus plastic, and check that the blade still locks with a solid snap rather than a loose wobble. Number 10, the common two-blade jackknife that's sold by the millions at every hardware store and five and dime in America for most of the last century. Most of these are exactly what they look like, a $10 knife. Which is exactly why people assume every case they find is valuable and get it wrong just as often as they get it right. The tell isn't the name, it's the dot pattern stamped beneath it. Called a dot dating system that tells you within a few years when that specific knife was made. Fewer dots generally means older. And certain dot and stamp combinations from the 1970s and earlier are worth real money, even in a common pattern. In a basement in Cadillac, Michigan, a family had 3 old case knives in a cigar box. 2 carried later more common dot patterns. One had an early stamp with no dots at all, placing it well before the dating system started. That one sold for $210. Check the tang stamp against a case dating chart. Check the handle for the correct pattern number stamped on the reverse.
And check for a matching original shield if the pattern calls for one.
Common case knives run $20 to $60. Early pre-dot or rare pattern examples, $150 to $400. Number 8, Winchester pocket knives, made only for a relatively short window when the rifle company branched into cutlery, which makes genuine examples scarce compared to companies that made knives for 100 years straight.
And check for a matching original shield if the pattern calls for one.
Plus handle materials that tend to run nicer than average. And jigged bone and genuine stag being common on their better patterns. At an auction barn outside Guttenberg, Iowa, a knife with a worn handle and a barely readable stamp sat in a box of assorted cutlery priced at $2 each. Once cleaned gently, the rectangular Winchester block stamp came through clearly. It sold for $340. Check for the rectangular Winchester tang stamp. Check the handle material quality. Since Winchester rarely used cheap material, even on common patterns, and check the blade count against known Winchester pattern numbers. Common Winchester knives run $40 to $100. Rarer patterns in good condition, $200 to $600. Number 7. Remington bullet knives, so nicknamed because of the small bullet-shaped shield inlaid into the handle, made by the ammunition company during a similar branch-out period as Winchester. The bullet shield itself carries a tiny date code, and different bullet colors and markings correspond to different production years, which is the single fastest way to date one of these without any other reference. At a smokehouse near Dubuque, Iowa, a bullet knife with a heavily worn shield hung on a nail, mistaken for scrap. Cleaned carefully, the bullet shield color and marking placed it in an early, desirable production run. It sold for $275. Check the bullet shield color and any visible lettering. Check the tang stamp for the Remington name and pattern number. And check the blade for the correct shape, matching that specific pattern, since mismatched replacement blades do turn up. Common Remington bullet knives run $30 to $80. Early or rare pattern examples, $150 to $400. Number 6, and here's the lesson that stuck with me. A knife with a blade that won't open, stuck solid with rust and grime, gets written off by almost everyone as a parts knife, worthless beyond salvage. At a barn sale outside Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, I passed on exactly that. A stag-handled knife with one blade frozen shut solid, figuring the mechanism was ruined. The man who bought it for $6 soaked it gently in oil over a week, worked the blade free without forcing it, and found a clean and sharp tang stamp and a matching set of unusual handle material underneath the grime. He sold it for $260. A stuck blade is often just old, thickened oil and rust, not a broken knife. Enforcing it is what actually ruins one. Check whether the stiffness is surface grime versus a genuinely broken spring. Check the tang stamp once you can safely see it, and never force a stuck blade open with pressure, which can snap the tip clean off. Value on a stuck but otherwise good knife runs close to a clean example once freed properly. A genuinely broken spring cuts the value by more than half. Quick pause. If you're getting something out of this, hit subscribe. I put one of these up every week. And the next one might be sitting in your own junk drawer right now. Number 5, Schrade Cutlery out of Walden, New York, a large and generally affordable maker, which means most Schrade knives you'll find really are the common $5 to $15 knives people assume. But Schrade's early Walden tang stamp, used before the company later stamped simply Schrade, And certain uncommon patterns from that early era are chased hard by pattern collectors specifically. In a toolbox at an estate outside Freeport, Illinois,
a knife with the early Walden stamp and an unusual four-blade pattern sat mixed in with common single-blade knives.
check the blade count against known rare Schrade patterns.
And check the handle for genuine bone versus the celluloid material Schrade also used.
Since celluloid can look similar, but is valued differently.
Early Walden stamped rare patterns, $80 to $200.
Number 4, Union Cutlery Company, better known by their tang stamp K.A. Bay R, out of Olean, New York. Before that name became famous, on a completely different kind of knife entirely. And that dog's head mark is worth significantly more than the plain text stamp used on other production.
At a farm auction near Waterloo, Iowa,
The folding knife with a faint dog's head logo sat in a crate of common knives, priced at the same flat rate as everything else.
It brought $290. Check for the dog's head logo specifically versus plain text K.A. bar stamps.
Check the handle material and pattern against Union Cutlery references. At wage. Common Union Cutlery knives run $25 to $70.
at an estate outside Galesburg, Illinois, a stag-handled knife sat in a box marked
Dog's
Mist.
head logo examples, $150 to $350.
And their better patterns use genuine stag handles with unusually deep, well-defined jigging. Northfield's tang stamp, a distinctive shield-shaped mark, is easy to miss a smaller regional maker that gets walked past constantly simply because the name is unfamiliar next to bigger brands. Number 3, Northfield Knife Company, out of Northfield,
Knives,
Connecticut.
$2 each. The shield-shaped Northfield stamp and deeply jigged genuine stag gave it away.
It sold to a specialist dealer for $380. Check for the shield-shaped Northfield tang stamp. Check the stag jigging depth and pattern.
Reproductions tend to have shallower, more uniform jigging.
And check the blade grind for hand finishing marks typical of the era.
Northfield knives in general run $150 to $500, given the maker's relative scarcity outside
Number
collector
2,
circles.
Novelty and Figural pocket knives, made in unusual shapes, a fish, a pistol, a rifle, rather than the standard folding rectangle, produced by various makers as advertising pieces or specialty items in relatively small numbers. Most people who find one assume it's a modern toy or a cheap souvenir because the shape looks playful rather than serious. That assumption costs people real money. A genuine early figural knife with correct maker markings and original condition is chased hard by
Dedicated
a specific
collector base. In a garage near
A
Muscatine,
small
Iowa,
fish-shaped knife sat tangled with fishing tackle for years, dismissed as a lure accessory. A collector recognized the maker's stamp on the underside immediately.
It sold for $520. Check the underside and edges for any maker's stamp.
Since figural knives are often marked in less obvious places than standard
check the
patterns,
mechanism for correct period hardware rather than modern replacement pins. And
since
check the
genuine
material.
early examples used real metal and bone rather than the plastic common knife toys used.
Genuine early figural knives run $200 to $600, with rare documented examples going higher.
Number 1, and this one hides best of all. Early custom and small shop handmade knives from regional cutlers working before large-scale factory production
Sometimes
stamped with just a single maker's initial or a small hand-town mark. Asymmetrical old knife with none of the polish of a factory piece. Asymmetrical old knife with none of the polish of a factory piece. But that asymmetry and hand finishing is exactly what collectors specializing in early American cutlery are hunting for. Since factory knives are, by design, too uniform to be this old and this individual.
At a farm auction near Quincy, Illinois, a man showed me a small,
plain-looking knife his great-grandfather had carried, no readable stamp, slightly uneven blade grind, and worn bone scales fitted by hand. I told him not to sell it there and to take it to a specialty cutlery auction instead.
It brought $2,100. Check for hand finishing marks and slight asymmetry,
which, on genuine early pieces, is a feature rather than a flaw. Check the pin work for hand-peened rather than machine-perfect finishing.
and check any faint stamp under strong light and magnification before assuming there's nothing there at all.
Verified early handmade knives run $300 to $1,500 depending on documentation and condition, with the best examples having sold well past $2,000.
Now the honest part. A cracked or badly chipped handle scale, especially on bone or stag, cuts the value hard, though it doesn't necessarily kill it the way a cracked blade does. A blade that's been reground into a completely different shape than it left the factory has lost most of its story. Rust on the outside is fine and expected on an old knife. Rust that's frozen the pivot solid or eaten through the tang stamp until it's unreadable costs you real money. And whatever you do, don't take a buffing wheel or heavy polish to an old blade trying to make it shine like new. I've watched a $300 knife become a $40 knife because someone buffed the original blade finish and tang stamp clarity right off it. Here's what gets me. Nobody teaches you these stamps, these dot systems, these shield shapes. You inherit a junk drawer, not a lesson. The dealers buying out an estate cheap aren't confused about what they're looking at when they offer $2 a knife for the whole box. They're counting on you not knowing the difference between a plain Schrade and an early Walden stamp. It comes back to the same thing every time. Value hides in plain sight. Not behind glass in a museum, but rattling in a coffee can of nails, tangled in a tackle box, sitting at the bottom of a junk drawer nobody's opened in years. So tonight, dig out every old pocket knife you've got, wipe the grime off gently, and read the tang before you decide it's nothing. Then tell me in the comments what you found. I answer every single one, and your find might open next week's video. Next week, We're going after old railroad lanterns.
And there's a maker's mark on the bottom of some of those, worth more than the shed they're hanging in.
I'll see you then.